Hi everybody, welcome to True Potential, Do More With Your Money. It is episode 205 and I'm delighted to be able to introduce the second in a series of our monthly reviews. So those of you who hopefully watched me last month got a bit of a flavour about what we'd done in December and indeed what we actually covered throughout what was a really great 2023 for us. So obviously we're into January or beyond January now, and I'm delighted to see that momentum has continued, and thrilled to be able to spend a bit of time talking about that with you all today, ladies and gentlemen. And to help me with that, joined by Richard Taylor, who's head of the True Potential platform, Christian Gardner, who's head of compliance and True Potential Wealth Management, and Jeff Casson, who is our Chief Investment Officer. Thank you for joining me today, gents. And I think as normal, it's not normal really because it's only the second one of this, I'll kick things off, maybe share a couple of highlights of the month itself, and then I'll pull across into some of your own specialisms from there. But as always, gents, as well, please feel free to jump in and really bring to life what we do at True Potential in terms of looking after clients, looking after advisors, and, as the name of the podcast suggests, helping everybody do more with their money as well. And in terms of doing more with the money, I mentioned January was a fab month, and more than £530 million of new pension and investment money was invested with True Potential onto our platform and into the portfolios, which now gives us more than 512,000 clients who we're looking after every single day. That money, for those who don't know, sits on the platform, which Richard and the team look after every day. And most of that new money which has been invested has came through Christian and the advice routes within wealth management, which is then ultimately looked after by yourself as well, Jeff. So just a little point of reference, ladies and gentlemen, when we are talking about money and what it means, I just want everybody to be aware that all four of us have a hand in managing people's money every single day. And really what that's resulted in, I mentioned the 512,000, we're about to take over £29 billion of total assets, which we look after. And that ranges from clients who've got £1 and are just beginning on their investment journey through to £1 million plus as well. But one thing in common all of those clients have got, as well as a consistent advice, operation and investment approach, is the technology as well. We build all of our tech in-house, and I think, Rich, you're going to speak a bit about some of the tech later today. But one of the predominant bits of technology we talk about is the client websites and the client apps as well, which get used so well, and it's thrilling really to see clients engaging with it and taking an interest in their money, and actually taking an interest fires across to something, Christian, you and I will speak about later today, which is annual suitability reviews and the importance of that. But if we look at some headline figures there, clients logged in nearly 800,000 times in January alone, of which 643,000 of those logins were via the app as well. So just being able to get your phone, check how's my portfolio doing, send a message to the head office team, maybe send a message to your advisor and everything else in between. So it's great to see it used so much. And I also got a great other output from the app as well, which is how many people Impulse saved. So Impulse Save is a bit of exclusive technology for True Potential, allows a client to save into Jeff's True Potential portfolios from £1 upwards. £12.7 million was invested in January along those lines. And that's great as well, because it's not just people checking their values, it's people saving more money and taking advantage. Jeff, this is a great segue across to you, taking advantage of a good performance in January.
And I think it sort of builds on that momentum that you're alluding to there with the platform assets, etc. The momentum that we saw in November and December in markets has been sustained to an extent as we've moved into January. And if we look at the aggressive portfolio, up around 0.78% over the course of the month. And that also tells us a little bit of a story around how what we saw in December was all markets really rallying. There was more differentiation as we come into January, particularly as we look at what equities did versus what bonds did. So when people are looking at the app, they will see that, say, a balanced portfolio was up around 0.13% on the month. That comes about because it's a larger allocation to bonds. Bonds were weaker in the month. The dominant theme there really that we were continuing to see strong growth coming through, which pushed back some of the expectations on interest rate reductions. When we ended December, if we take the US, for example, market was looking to price 5 at its extreme 6 interest rate reductions for 2024. As people came back after the new year, started to reappraise that, the strength of growth challenged some of that expectation. So we saw bonds give back a little bit of the gains that they made in the last 2 months of the year.
But I think the important thing is, Jeff, you mentioned, modest gains, but it can sound like a boring way to make money, but modest gain on top of modest gain month on month just
very much so. And it's that point, Dan, that you're referencing there, just the compounding of those gains month on month is very powerful.
Yeah.
And that's linking that to impulsive thinking about that. That's exactly what we're wanting to achieve with that technology, giving people the opportunity to participate, but little and often makes a much better outcome over the long run than trying to think about the volatility that we've seen and to time that. I think little and often allows you to navigate that and using technology to do that.
It's kind of a message we've had for a while around impulse saves in particular, because you mentioned the 13 million, Dan. So, what we see over, we call tax year end, when people start to, look at things because there's a hard deadline approaching. There's a lot of people that tend to leave the contributions, the ISA contributions, the pension contributions right at the last minute. But what we've been trying to say on this show, and obviously through some of the, the communications that come out, is, you don't have to wait. We've got the technology there. We remind you, pretty often about it, but, it's dead easy to use. It's there, it's accessible.
Especially if you're in a tax sheltered vehicle, such as a pension or an ISA, because you've got that unfettered growth as well.
Yeah.
You don't have a drag from it, from a taxation event in there. So why wait till the end of that tax year for it?
And the advantage of the technology is you don't have to wait to speak to your financial advisor either. You can just do it straight away on your app into your existing portfolios, and it's invested within a few days once the money comes through. So it's a really efficient way to do it as well.
And one of the companies which I listened to some of your videos, Jeff, you and the team, and some of the companies which have done well has been tech. Yeah. In particular, say, I think Netflix was a highlight.
Yeah, I think, it's been really interesting just looking at how we've talked about the narrowness of markets last year and the Magnificent Seven technology names in the US. When we look at what they've continued to deliver, and this is the important point, they might be valued highly relative to the broader market, but they're actually delivering very strong growth. So as a style, it allowed over the month of January, growth was a much better performing style than value had been. And that's maybe a little bit sort of incongruous when I'm saying, well, expectation that rates might not fall as fast as people had expected. But I think it also allows one to think about, well, why would we be cutting interest rates? If growth is stronger and we're not cutting rates, well, that's probably a better outcome, one could argue, than having to cut rates because the economy is deteriorating faster than people were expecting. So it's certainly providing a backdrop that is going to be interesting for central banks to navigate. And we saw that towards the end of the month of January, with the major central banks being the ECB, Bank of England, and also the Fed really saying, well, we're probably at peak rates, but it's too soon to indicate when we're going to cut. And part of that probably stems from a behavioural challenge when we think about the inflation discussion that we've been all having, that, well, it's transitory, it'll only be there for a few months, and lo and behold, inflation took a long time to come back to a more normal level. Maybe they're just wary of cutting too soon and that exacerbating. With
my consumer kind of shoes on it, but life feels busy still. Outside there, it was my wife's birthday just last week, and we said we'll go away for the night, and because the children were going to be looked after. It was really difficult to find a hotel, for instance. I know that's just one little example, but quite odd, quite different to what you hear out there.
And you kind of see that as well in sort of the broader economic data in terms of the strength that there is in services. And where that seems to be coming through most is services wage inflation still remains at a level that is above, one would argue, where central banks would want it to be. So it's that dynamic that wage inflation is maybe sort of stickier than that of which we're seeing in other areas of the economy.
No, I think there's been some not over the top reaction. I think everybody can make their own decisions in private businesses, especially need to do what's right for them. But it almost felt like some of the wage inflationary actions which happened last year may have been a bit too preemptive. And obviously, once you start giving large wage rises out, they're baked in.
Yeah.
It's not as if you can say to somebody, right, well, inflation's 10%, so we'll give you a 10% pay rise now, but then it goes back down to 4%, so we'll take 6% off you now. It's kind of, once it's there,
it's in,
it's there. And I guess there's a wee bit of that last year.
And I suppose the dynamic there is that if you've got 10% and then maybe inflation resides at, say, 3 to 6, anywhere there, you're, to our earlier point of compounding, you're compounding a 3 or a 6 on top of a 10. And that's the sort of the historic area of where there probably is some concern in central banks' view that if you embed it into wages, it can become more of a problematic issue as you go down the road. So it's maybe not surprising that central banks are pushing back a little bit on where the market has taken them in terms of interest rate reductions coming through.
And I thought Netflix did well because Richard and Christian couldn't share passwords anymore as well. But yeah,
I think I'm paying for half the family, to be honest. Well, not just Christian.
I was using my dad's for a long time. It cut off suddenly, so I think he may have got caught. So from there, but I would probably, Jeff, that the last thing to mention on investment side of things, and we'll fire across to Rich, is you and the gang have got a new weekly show out.
Yeah, we've started now on a Friday to do a show that really just recaps what's happened in the week that has been, and we think that just allows us to capture all of the data points in the week. It's going out later, so we get most US data comes out at 1:30 our time, so we put the show out after that, a bit like Friday, where we were able to capture the US employment report and just give people that neat wrap up of what's happened in the week.
Yeah, I find, selfishly find it really handy because it is that weekly wrap up. It's a good bite size in terms of its timing as well. I think when we've done the morning markets, obviously because it's in the morning, as you say, by the time America wakes up, so maybe life's moved on a lot since then. So doing it with that recap just gives you enough of a feeling.
And that was the challenge that we had with US data on a Friday. It seemed a bit late to be commenting about it on a Monday at times, but we've now got the balance between closing the week off and then opening up the week with what's to come.
Grand. Well, needless to say, ladies and gentlemen, as well, if you do have any questions or feedback about it, please do pop it to me and the rest of the team, and we'll take it in mind because it's a new series, as indeed this is a new type of show as well. So it's important to make content which is relevant to everybody. But talking about relevance, Rich, I'll pass across to you for service support and technology updates as well. So maybe if you give a bit of a flavour for how many clients, what we do, how many advisors we look after. As a starter, please?
I mean, I'll cover, you mentioned this at the start, Dan, but I think in terms of, the month of January as well, I'll just give you some figures on sort of what's passed through the platform, because I think it's, the size of the platform now. I was somebody who was, around for the early days of the platform when we were just starting out. You mentioned we're hopefully going to pass through the, the £29 billion mark, hopefully this week. 440 million pounds of client cash passed through our bank accounts in January. So I think, when we send the notes out, these numbers can seem quite small when you say them quickly. It's a massive amount of trust, really, that clients are placing on us now.
When you say it passes through their bank account, Richard, is that when we receive it from someone's bank account, for instance, and invested?
Yeah, exactly that. So we, in order to get invested into Jeff's funds, a big part of what the platform's there to do is convert cash. So that can be cash that comes in from a client transfer, of which we do 5,000 to 6,000 every, on a typical month. That can be an impulse save that we've touched on, so that's somebody topping up to their pension or their ISA, and it can also be a direct debit. We've got 38,000 people contributing on the first of the month, as an example, into the direct debits that we provide. So ultimately, they're all cash receipts that are hitting the platform, and that's 440 million, but it's also over 600,000 individual credits. Now we'll talk about some of the support service, what we do around clients and helping them, to access some of these good things that we provide. But I think it's important to mention, obviously, the infrastructure that we've built. We've worked very hard on that over the years to be able to deal with the sort of volume that passes through. So obviously you need a lot of staff to deal with 600,000 individual credits. Obviously we allow the technology that we designed and built ourselves to do all of the, as much of the hard work as we possibly can. But, it's a privilege, every opportunity I get to talk to clients, I think, we never forget that. You mentioned people that it's, could be £1, it could be £1 million of the investment, but, that's a lot of trust that they place in us, and we really don't, we don't ever overlook that.
No, I think every pound is very precious because that's our client's money. It's their personal wealth. They've worked really hard to accrue it.
Yeah.
And as a custodian of it, we have to make sure it's never taken for granted.
Absolutely.
There was another number you mentioned in there, Richard, in terms of 38,000 direct debits, which we collect at the start of the month. Christian, that probably typically happens via advice, does it?
It does quite often, yes, although clients can also do it via their app and client site. And some clients do choose to start to top up their investments either as a one-off through Impulse Save or through a regular direct debit. But it is something advisors will always consider when looking at a fact find with their client. We'll gather all their information, and if they've got any spare income, they might recommend starting to contribute that monthly into their pension or their ISA.
Yeah.
It's also, it ties into some of the earlier points about saving on a regular and often basis. Just building that discipline is one way to describe it, but it's a really useful thing just to have that direct debit set up there, because in essence, over time, you maybe don't even notice it going out, and that it becomes just a very good way of topping up one's investment portfolio.
I think it's even more impressive than the Impulse Saves. The Impulse Saves are one-off events. Yeah. Often there's maybe clients with some spare cash and they've invested it, versus the direct debit. And, we're telling anybody how to suck eggs. I have a direct debit which goes on the platform and it comes out on the 1st or 2nd of the month, along with my other bills. Council tax. I think we've said this before on these podcasts. Just treat it almost as another bill. Treat it like your council tax, your car insurance, what have you. It hurts at first. It really does, because there's another 100 whatever pounds gone from my account. But as you rightly say, Jeff, it starts becoming habit forming. It starts to sink in. If you're lucky enough to get one of those big inflationary pay rises like we saw last year as well, it becomes even more forgotten about.
I think it's more challenging. We do like to think of it as a bill when you have a direct debit, but bills are normally things you have to pay that month. When you're looking at a pension, you might not be accessing that for 30, 40, 50 years. Yeah. But there was research released recently showing a recommendation to increase the state pension age to 71. So for younger people, especially if you don't contribute regularly into your pension, you might have to wait to 71 to retire. So it's really important to pay that money in now, get plenty of growth on it over a compound basis over a number of years, and hopefully retire earlier than 71.
Yeah. And we could do a whole podcast, we probably have and probably will again in the future, about the importance of putting £100 away in your 20s,
It makes a huge difference,
versus putting £100 away in your 40s or 50s as well. Again, going back to compounding and long-term savings, just building and building on top of each other. And I know if you're in your 20s or 30s, it seems really boring.
It's Just Eat, isn't there, in hotels?
What day was payday last week? Was it Wednesday or
Thursday?
Thursday. I've never seen it. Rachel had a Deliveroo truck drive around here. There was a lot of wages getting spent on the first day of the month. It's
not cheap either when you do it through them.
No. And these are some of the kids, I feel like, really old. These are some of the younger members of staff who I do say, are you saving in your pension? And say, can't afford it. You've just spent £10 on a McDonald's.
Priorities, isn't it?
I think users are not last till 71.
But that's it. I mean, the difference between the direct debits and the Impulse Save that we talked about earlier on, it's sort of out of harm's way from the first of the month. Even with Impulse Save, it's a great tool that we offer. But you can almost say, right, I'll do that tomorrow, I'll do that next week, and then something comes along, your missus buys a bag, or you've got a holiday to pay for, or whatever it might be, and then all of a sudden you've missed the opportunity. So I think it does. The direct debits is a really, really important way of just doing that disciplined investing, and then getting access to, as you mentioned before, Jeff, periods over the year when you can make the most of investing during these periods.
And the other bit which is interesting, Richard, when you're talking about all the foundations, the infrastructure we've got in place, it can seem like big numbers, and sometimes clients may think, well, I'm glad you can handle the scale, but so what? And I suppose that the so what is it frees up our staff to spend more time with clients.
Correct, yeah. So take my operations team as an example. So about 50% of the staff are there not just to do the number crunching and the matching payments. You know, as I mentioned before, the technology takes care of most of that. The staff are there to help advisors, predominantly on the platform side of the business. We're typically there to help our financial advisors, of which we've got about 5,000 users, directly authorised users. Obviously got our own wealth management partners. There's over 1,000 of those. And essentially, you know, they're there to make sure that they know how the platform works, they know how to get in touch with us if there's a query. So just some numbers from our service teams, we get 20,000 pipelines a month. And a pipeline, that's basically our own internal messaging system, direct from the advisor. So again, another big number, and we need...
So that could be an advisor asking to release some cash to a client, for instance, with disbursement, use our language.
Disbursements, changing direct debits, any alterations to plans, information about, you know, what tax-free cash a client might have as well. Because I think that was another point as well I wanted to call out, was really we're not just a platform's job is there to support clients who want, you know, disbursements and they want income from the pensions as well. So, you know, we do on average about £78 million of withdrawals to clients. So again, another, you know, quite a colossal sum where we're actually paying money. I think it's about 38,000 individual credits to client bank accounts as well. And those are clients that have invested with us for a long period of time, but have now reached the point where they have maybe retired or partially retired, and they need an income, or they need to supplement their income via the savings that they've built up with us over a number of years. Typically with another 20,000 emails from advisors that we get, and that's probably, you know, just one particular area of True Potential. We've got the relationship management team that look after clients from a direct point of view. You know, they'll have on average about 10,000 calls that they'll take on any given month. And, you know, they work very hard, sorry. Very hard.
Very hard,
yeah.
They'll beat you up, they're upstairs today,
They work very hard to make sure that, you know, they actually get the phone answered within a very short period of time. It's nothing more frustrating than, you know, I think everybody knows when you're dealing with other companies, especially when they get to a large, you know, company status, very, very difficult to get through to the person you need to speak to at times. You know, whereas those 10,000 calls I mentioned, they're picked up within 30 seconds on average. It's not many companies that are out there doing that, and the response times are something that we never rest on our laurels. We want to be there for clients. We want to make sure that if there is a query, we're very, very accessible. So we're providing information through the videos and what have you, but if there is a need for a client to come in...
Well, importantly, I think, Richard, you made a good point as well, that whoever answers can typically deal with that query as well. You're not just going through the front desk and waiting and getting put in hold. The relationship management team are very well trained. They could typically answer most queries straight away as well. Not all of them, of course. There's sometimes where we need to go into advice, we need to talk about other things, but, you know, the relationship managers are designed to be really, really good generalists, so to speak. And on that subject as well, Richard, I think the team are now open on a Saturday as well.
Yeah, so the team are now they're now open Saturdays from 8 a.m. till 12 p.m. on Saturdays. So again, just trying to open things up to make sure that we're there. With, you know, there's a lot of people take Saturday morning as the opportunity to, you know, look into their investments, maybe tidy up some of the finances. So we wanted to open that and be there for clients, and again, hopefully provide that additional layer of service at the weekend. No,
it's a good trial, because we've tried it in the past and we've found often a lot of clients don't really use it. But I think it's been most of this year, if not a little bit of December, where we've tried the Saturday out. And please do use it, ladies and gentlemen, if you need to get a hold of the team. Apologies. If we move across to you, Christian, we'll stay on basically how we interact with our clients. With Richard, myself, Jeff, we've spoke a lot about the technology, and indeed you've mentioned the tech in terms of how clients can set their own direct debits up. etc. But there's something called an annual suitability review.
Yep.
As well. So maybe before we talk about some of the updates with the technology and what that means to the clients, could you put your compliance hat on? I know it'll be difficult for you, but can you put that hat on and just explain what one is and why we have to do one?
Sure. So financial advisors, whether paid an ongoing fee, have to review their customers' investments at least once a year to make sure they are still suitable for them, so they are in the right fund that Jeff provides, aligned to their risk profile, that the product's right for them. So, if they've got a tax wrapper available, such as an ISA or a pension, could they switch from a less tax efficient product into that? And, generally review the client's circumstances to check that everything's still okay. In many firms, it's a very manual process. Your advisor would have to come around to your house. You would have to spend an hour or so with them. But we've used technology to make this as efficient as possible, both for the advisor and for the end client. Clients primarily do their annual suitability review online, and we've completely overhauled our online process in the past few months. It's actually been a 12-month build, a huge amount of testing and development to make sure that every single factor of this works, and we're giving as much value to clients as possible. It's sorry.
The voice is gone.
Yeah, completely. One of the key facets is now we've got a lot of information on Jeff's funds, so you can see, you can analyse exactly how your funds performed. You can see what withdrawals you've made, what contributions you've made. So feeding back to broken down into impulse saves, direct debits, etc. And then we work through to gather as much information from the client as possible, and that's then referred over to the advisor. So if everything's fine, there's no changes needed, the client gets a report automatically. But if there's changes needed or somewhere where we might need a bit more information, the advisor's automatically alerted and they know exactly where to look at to focus their time, and also not to waste clients' time then going over the same information again.
Yeah, and it's that wasting the time that I think is really important. I think it's important that everybody, particularly clients, take an interest in their investments. It's at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, it's your money, it's your future, it's your retirement, etc. So we want you to be engaged with your money. We want you to see how it's performing. We want to give you the ability to lift the bonnet a bit. And what I really like about this new process, because you've heard us talk about this before in these podcasts, we're all clients of True Potential ourselves. We all live this, and we all kind of eat our own cooking, so to speak, to use probably a Northeast colloquial term from there. And it's very much a wizard approach. So it's not a case of you just get like a printout and it's like, go away and read that, good luck. It steps you through and it talks, and it gives a bit of extra definition, so to speak. If you've got a goal there, it's telling you you're on track with your goal and things, which you've heard us all speak about goals as well. And having a goal is great because it tells you where you need to be and by when. And are you going to get there on time or not? Gives you something to anchor your investment or your pension on. So an ASR is great for that. But again, going back to being a client ourselves, we've all had to do ASRs in the past where it almost feels like a box ticking exercise. So the advisor spends that hour with you, tick, 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 versus the way we've used the tech, we've used the websites now. I think on average, I think you can probably get through a review in 15, 20 minutes now. And that's not because we've taken big shortcuts or what have you. It's because we've presented the data and the facts in a certain fashion. Now, why do I like that? It's not about us saving time for the sake of saving time. It then means when the client wants to spend time speaking to an advisor or vice versa, from there, we can really get into the ribs of what's going on. We can explain things better. We can have broader discussions, less time spent box ticking, more time spent actually giving good advice and explaining things in a better fashion.
And one of the ways we've targeted that conversation with the advisor is at the end of the review, the client and the advisor get an action plan. So every time the client logs into the website, if they want to, they can look at their action plan, see what's still outstanding. It might be topping up your ISA or looking at withdrawals. But it means that as soon as the client rings that advisor, they can also see the same action plan and go, right, I know what we need to address this year. These are the key points for us to talk about and walk through, rather than, as you say, Dan,
it's always bringing context to the conversation, context for the advisor, context for the client, both allowing them to do more and to achieve actually what they want to do in a way that's a bit like a training plan. Here's what you need to do to get to there. Here's the...
It's a true review though, isn't it? You know, this is the thing, I think, with some of these going back sort of box ticking, you can get in the habit of just going through the motions, can't you?
It shouldn't be robotic. I think some of your work you do should be robotic, which is the direct debits come in, it's matched, it's invested.
Yeah.
But I think when it comes to the person, it should never be robotic. It should never be box ticking. And you made a really excellent point, Christian, which was the view which the client sees is the view which the advisor sees. Yep. And I think we've all been, I'll not get into it because it's boring. Well, it was annoying for me, but it'd be boring for everybody, where I was trying to book a flight last week. Speaking to British Airways, I've been a silver member of theirs for years or what have you. And they couldn't see what I was trying to do. And I was trying to explain it over the phone. And it was so annoying because I was almost having to just tell this person. And I could hear her typing into the same system, which had already rejected me, even down to the fact that the poor girl at the end of the phone typed the wrong thing in. So it was just a huge waste of time and duplication of effort. Versus, if I do something, I want you to be able to see it. And again, and vice versa. Just cuts through a lot of annoying questions, a lot of annoying repetition.
And it's also about the efficiency and sort of the effectiveness of it. Two things that are really paramount to everything we're doing for clients and for advisors. Yeah. It's all about giving people time to actually spend it on the things that make a difference.
Yeah. And spend the resource correctly, Jeff, as well. That's the thing. We all manage staff in large teams, but you don't want them doing some of the donkey work, so to speak, the matching things, the rekeying, and that's where a lot of companies go wrong, whereas I think we get the balance right between saying, we want the system to do as much of that as we possibly can, and then allow our staff to be there and be there. That's why we can pick up the phone.
And we talked about some of this with AI, artificial intelligence. Again, it's not in a bit to cut costs and get rid of staff. It's in a bit to actually speed up some of the more mechanical tasks to provide that human touch from them. We've spoken about AI before. There's a lot more to come with that, so we'll save that for another day. But one of the things we'll finish on is how we also spend our resource in terms of community side of things. So each month, as hopefully everybody knows, we support a charity which is typically nominated by a client, by a member of staff, or by one of our advisors as well. And when we think about the last couple of months, we've been working with one of the local hospices here in the northeast, a hospice called St Oswald's, which typically covers Sunderland, Durham and Newcastle, and a little bit west as well as we get into the middle of Northumberland toward Cumbria. And they look after all age ranges, really. They look after what you call youth, which is 0 up to 18, and then adults after that. But where St Oswald's are a bit different as well is they have a definition of young adults as well, which are people from 18 to 25, because let's say you require specialist care, either for hospice reasons or just day to day. But when you hit 18 and you're in that system, you actually end up in an old person's care home as well. You imagine being 18 with that. So it's something St Oswald's are doing, is differentiating from that. They have young adult provision now, but they're actually building a brand new young adult ward there as well. So they were kind enough to show me around just a couple of weeks ago now. It was quite a humbling experience, actually. It's a great place. It's in the centre of a place called Gosforth, for those who don't know the northeast, which is a couple of miles from the city centre. And the amount of people they look after on a monthly, yearly basis is great. So, between, say, the True Potential, so the staff and everyone who's donated, but also my family's charity, which is the Harrison Foundation, which is fortunate enough to be a partner in True Potential. We raised £31,000 for St Oswald's. Where will that go toward? That'll go toward actually building a brand new bathroom for the young adults ward. The bathrooms are so important because if you can imagine, some of these young lads and lasses can't support their own body weight at all. They're in a chair and what have you. That's really uncomfortable for some of them. You imagine if you were sat in a chair all day, what that's doing to your muscles, what that's doing in terms of cramp and everything from there. Sometimes the only respite they get from that is being in these large baths where they're floating, where the water's helping them relax and things. So it's a huge part of their recovery, but comfort as well. So that £31,000 is going towards a state-of-the-art bathroom. It's also going to improving the facilities in there and building the new ward. So huge thank you to everybody at TP who's donated for that and further afield. And then when we think about the February onwards, we're working with the Newcastle Eagles, who are our city's basketball team. And we started building a good affiliation with the Eagles. We certainly spent some company resources on there in December. It was our Christmas party there. I'm glad to say I didn't see anybody trying any slam dunks in there. There probably was different types of dunking going on, but that's definitely not for this podcast from there. But one of the ways in which we're going to be working with the Eagles is in terms of getting youth to play sports as well. It's a fantastic setup they've got there, but one of the things they've found since the pandemic occurred is that if things need to be given up, it tends to be sports, tends to be equipment, like tracksuits, trainers and everything. It is money spent getting the bus or a taxi to training and things like that. And I've grew up all my life playing sports. I think actually all of us have been involved with sports in different ways as well. And I always think it's so important to not just be good academically, but have some pursuits from there. It's healthy. It's great in terms of socialising.
Teamwork.
Everything we tend to look for actually when we're recruiting new members of the team at True Potential. So we're going to be working with them in terms of back to sport initiatives from there. So that's what's coming up, and we'll update everybody with that.
Never really played basketball, to be honest.
Well, you're tall enough, Richard.
I knew I was going to come in with a tall...
6'3", 6'4"?
Not quite, 6'2".
6'2". You're bigger than that. Well, Christian, are you the shortest in the room today?
5'11".
5'10", so
5'10",
there we go.
Bad luck, Jeff. No basketball for you.
Won that one, no basketball.
Me and Dan will be on one team.
I'm a bit clumsy for anything else. I was good at playing rugby in terms of hitting things, and that was about it from there. But no, and again, thank you everybody for, in advance for the support with that. It really means a difference to us, I think, because we can help out our community, and I think it's not all about making money and adding new clients and you've got to do some good as well, which is something I think we've got a long, proud track record at True Potential of doing. And in terms of our long, proud track record, I'm delighted to see February's off to a great start already. I think we're a few days in, but everything's looking really positive. I think markets so far great. Jeff are looking green as well. No, so delighted with that. More clients are coming to us, being given top quality advice, Christian, and then Richard, you and the team are looking after them in your normal excellent fashion as well. So long may that continue, you three. Please keep it up, and then we'd have a positive February report from there. And I think, ladies and gentlemen, that probably finishes things off for today as well. Thank you very much for listening. I hope it's been of interest to you. I hope it lifts the bonnet effectively on a bit more what we do at True Potential and brings a bit to life how we do help you do more with your money. Looking forward to speaking to you again next month. Thanks again. Have a great day.